All right. So today I am joined by Rebecca Palmer. Rebecca, for listeners who are not familiar with your work, tell us about you, tell us about your firm, your area of focus, where you're located.
Absolutely. Again, Rebecca Palmer, thank you very much for having me on the podcast. I appreciate it. About me, I'm from Lincoln, Nebraska. Kind of a random fact, Midwest. I absolutely loved it there. Really solid, great people. In touch with many of them. None of my family's still there, but I grew up there for 18 years. Moved to Florida, went to Stetson Law and Stetson undergrad. Began practicing over 25 years ago. I initially started in like corporate and insurance, and I just wasn't feeling it. I really wanted something more individualized. Um, I had, did public defender when I was in law school. Knew I didn't want to do that. But I wanted to do litigation, and I wanted to work with individuals. And I started doing some family law, and just it became my passion. It's exactly what I want to do. I love, love, love doing family law. I, I feel like I meet people at really, really rough times in their life, and I get to kind of walk the walk with them.
Right,
And
right.
then I see really neat things later.
Yeah.
I have several great stories about that. One quick one is one of my clients, a year after her divorce, she and her daughter, my daughter, were friends. And I said, let's go out to lunch, see how you're doing. We go out to lunch like a lightning bolt. I go, wait a minute. I've got a friend you need to date. And she's like, no, 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 no. I
I got
was
friends
like,
here to date.
no, I do. He's wonderful. You got to date him. Go on one date, see what happens. So fast forward 3 years later, I did their wedding in Key
That's awesome.
West.
That's
So
awesome.
I really get to walk the walk with
Yeah.
people. I was at a large law firm for nearly 20 years. It was about 18 years exactly. And before I joined that firm, I wanted to hang my shingle. But a couple of my dear friends worked at the big firm. They don't work there any longer either. But I just like, I gotta go. I gotta check this out. I love these guys and had a wonderful 18 years. And a really cool thing is because it was such a big firm, um, I really got to have the backup of that to learn how to basically run a firm.
Right.
By that, I mean, they didn't do family law in a deep way. And they ran in teams, had different teams. And I said, can I do a family law team? I want to, and they had no moms or women moms that
Sure.
were team leaders. And when I was on maternity leave, my daughter, who's now 19, they called me and said, hey, you know what? You're already doing some family law. You love it. We'll give you a team. So I was able to build it. I had 2 to 3 associates, other attorneys, paralegal, legal assistant, and that was my team. It was like a little firm inside a firm.
That's
And so
great.
I was about to turn 50, and I was like, if I don't ever follow my dream of having my own firm, I'll never do it.
Yeah.
So I started my own firm and designed it the same way. And I mean, obviously, when I say same way, same amount of people, very
Right.
different philosophies and run differently. But it's awesome.
Yeah.
I used to want to retire early. Now I can't even imagine retiring.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, I've always said for me as a family mediator, and I've been doing it for 17 years, it's interesting because a lot of family mediators are either retired attorneys, retired judges, retired
Yes.
social workers, retired
Yes.
therapists. And so I'm like, I have a 17-year jump on retirement. Um, and I'm already there. And people are like, well, Matthew, what are you going to do when you retire? I'm like, I'm doing it. Like, that's what people in my industry do when they retire, they become mediators. And, for me, my idea, like, if someone says, Matthew, what is retirement? To me, it's not that you quit work, you're on the golf course, you're collecting Social Security. Like, no, like, I can't imagine. For me is I will continue to do what I do because I want to, not because I have to.
Absolutely.
But I'll still do it.
I
Like I
agree.
have a passion for it and I hear the passion for it, with you. It's interesting because I've, working with so many family attorneys through the years. It's interesting because a lot of them, go to law school, get out and go to the public defender's office. They're working for the state. And it's a good place to cut your teeth, right? Then a number of them, it usually goes one of two ways. They're like you, where they're like, you know what, I'm going to get in with the big firm. and you cut your teeth with a big firm, or they go right into open up their own practice, and then they struggle, or they leave that, they go to a big firm, and then they go back and open up a practice, because there's something about that structure that if you're not self-structured, it is a good place to go. And I've got a friend or attorney I work with that's a friend, and he did the same thing you did. He was with an attorney with a firm. They had no family section, and he's like, I really want to do family law. And so they're like,
That's
okay.
interesting.
And they did the same type of a thing. And then he went out, started his own firm. So I'm listening to your story going, yeah. And I remember going to that firm, and he was the only family attorney. You walk in, you got all these corporate attorneys and a room full of paralegals and whatnot. And they sort of just stuck him in this office to sort of start growing it.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was really fortunate. Like, for example, when I knew my firm, my big firm, was primarily real estate.
Okay.
And so
his dealt with foreclosure. So
oh, that's interesting.
yeah.
That's interesting. But well, it for this firm, it was more corporate, real estate. And when the recession hit, that was a wonderful time for me.
Yeah.
Because my business was going great. And when I say wonderful time, a lot of people were hurting, but not my business. It wasn't. And, so that was, I really made kind of a mark. And then I had some really notable cases, that I was fortunate enough to handle. So how it work. And I'm a mediator too, which I agree with everything you said. I can relate with.
Yeah.
Mediation is my favorite thing. I mean, it's just kind of similar to what I described as divorce. You go in as an independent person, but in one day, you can potentially resolve all the issues.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting what you said about, meeting people and becoming friends or having relationships, getting to walk through with them. It's funny because a lot of the attorneys I work with, like I said, they start out like in the public defender's office, state attorney's office, whatnot. And then a lot of them that I work with now are family attorneys. And they joke and they say, the difference between family law and criminal law is criminal law, you meet really bad people on their best behavior. Family law, you meet really good people on their worst behavior. And just like you said, though, I mean, I've met some people that are really nice people, and we become friends even as a mediator. Like we become friends, and some really great stories about, like you said, even just being able to be there. And I've done this like mediations for them later in life that, okay, maybe they need a modification, or okay, that did, it was a paternity matter. And then now they're married and now they're getting divorced. They're like, you were so good the first time around. And there's a relationship, there's a trust level there, and being able to walk through and see their kids grow and see the successes. I love, just like you said, the recessions and everything is bad. The worse the world gets, the busier we get, but we're there. I look at divorces, we're not destroying anything. We are actually reorganizing something into something that can be positive and good. And to have a hand in that, it's so rewarding.
It really is. It really is. One thing you just mentioned reminded me of one of my first favorite clients, who's been a client for many, many years. So I did his postnuptial agreement, which is, as you know, like a prenup, but you just entered it after marriage.
We just did an episode on postnuptials a couple of weeks ago.
A lot of people don't know about it, so that's good. I'm glad you did that. Yeah. So, so I did his postnup, then I did his divorce, then I did his prenup.
That's awesome.
And then my father, who was a wonderful minister, did his wedding because he got to know my family.
Okay, wait. Say that again? Wait, say that again?
So
your father.
My father did my client's wedding.
And your father is a minister.
Was a minister, yeah.
So is mine.
Oh, are you serious?
Yes.
Wow. What denomination?
Non-denominational. He was, my father, and a side note, I think this is probably in some episode going back, whatnot. So my father was raised Jewish, was in rabbinical school to become a rabbi, ended up converting to Christianity, became a Southern Baptist minister, and then left the Southern Baptist Convention and went non-denominational, but I was bar mitzvahed in a Southern Baptist church, which was crazy. Um, so now my parents, well, for the past 10 years, they have been missionaries in Africa. And
Oh,
they
amazing.
started a church that they started a church in Africa. They're running an orphanage in Africa. And then he also is a trainer with Myers-Briggs and does,
Amazing man.
yeah. So, but yeah,
Wow. My
so,
dad would have loved him. Yeah,
so, but what's interesting is like, and I believe, I really believe, Rebecca, that just like with you, like having that as an upbringing, like it as a background for us really helps us in the profession that we're in, dealing with people, dealing with crisis, dealing with emotions. I think it
yes,
really does help and play in.
I agree 100%. First of all, your father sounds fascinating. And second, I definitely agree with that comment. In fact, I was asked by one reporter, why'd you become a family lawyer? And I was thinking about it. And I basically said, because I'm a preacher's kid, and I was like,
And
so,
I got divorced.
oh,
And I was
yeah,
the first of multiple generations. Like we didn't have like I had nobody to call in my family going, "Hey, how do you get divorced?" Like my parents were marriage counselors and my dad was a pastor. Like, how do you get
yeah,
divorced? There's
yeah,
nobody to help
exactly.
me.
My dad used to say that they should make it harder to get married and easier to get divorced.
Yes. Like,
The divorce steps to get married and make it easier because it's so painful. Divorce is
yeah.
very
Well, and
painful. So,
my dad does a lot of premarital counseling.
yeah.
And it's interesting because we've had some conversations. He's like, okay, so I will tell you, neither my current wife nor my ex-wife could make it past session 2 of his premarital counseling.
Whoa.
Like session 2, like my brother and his wife made it through and they've been married forever and ever and ever. And my dad says that most people that go through his counseling actually discover they're not supposed to get married and they call it off. Like, and just like you said, like it makes it harder because you're really doing the work that you and I do on the back end as mediators. Like, okay, let's look hindsight and see all the mistakes and see, so maybe you don't repeat that. Well, he's honing into that going, okay, what are your beliefs about children one day? What are your beliefs about finances? What are your beliefs about this? Wait a second. You guys aren't even on the same page. Maybe you shouldn't. And like with my ex and I we after session 2, we're like, you know what? You just don't get it. You're a different generation. And he's like, yeah, okay, good luck with you on that one. And here we are.
Yeah,
Just like you said, it make it
yeah.
harder to get divorced, or it's harder to get married. Do all the heavy lifting on the front end, and then you and I don't have to do it on the back end.
It's true. I've done several weddings. It's such a
I've done a
blessing.
couple. I don't like doing them.
You know?
Divorce is so much easier. I'm like, there's so much pressure in a marriage. I'm like, do I say the right thing? And then what do you write? Okay, so let me ask you this. I made a mistake the first. I've done, I think, 3 weddings. The first wedding, I made a huge mistake.
What'd you do?
On their marriage certificate, it says name, Matthew Brickman, occupation, divorce mediator. That's not what you should probably put on somebody's marriage certificate, right? And so I don't know. I just the pressure of making sure everything's right, especially in the back of my head, going 50% in a divorce. I hope you guys can make it. I don't know. In a way, Rebecca almost felt like a fraud.
Oh no, not at all.
So I'm like, oh, like for better or worse, do you really? Yeah, whatever. I don't know.
So I like your dad, but probably not as intensified. I require that we have meetings ahead of time.
Okay.
Same thing. And I ask them, do you want kids? Or how are you going to handle your bank account?
Cool.
All that stuff.
That's cool.
And, I do the same thing, basically because that comment, harder to get married, easier to get divorced.
Yeah.
Because it's so hard. And I find it very rewarding. I've only done it for very, very close people to me. And, so I wouldn't do it just for someone random.
I did. The first one I did was random. So it was a client that I did her divorce. and her and I became really good friends. And her sister was getting married, but her and her husband had already divorced like once or twice, and nobody was coming. Nobody, like even the family, they're like, we're not doing this again. And they couldn't find anybody. And so she calls me and she goes, Matthew, you can do my sister's wedding, right? And I'm like, I guess so. I'm a notary. Like, sure. But it was because like nobody else would.
That's interesting.
So
Are they still together?
yeah. Yeah.
Well, there you go.
I know. So yes, I mean, and that was years ago. And then I had a really, really, really great friend, and she's like, I really, really want you to do it. Her and my kids were, basically grew up together, went to school together, and I'm like, okay. And I love her, and her husband's cool. They just had a baby, and so
that's awesome. That's awesome.
So it sounds like so you're really honing in on not just the divorce side, but also the front side. But so this generation, so you and I are like the Gen Xers. So then like Gen Y. So for those listeners that don't know, okay, so Gen Y is also dubbed as the millennial generation. Those are people that have been born, that were born between 1980 and 1994. So at the time of recording this podcast, that means that these children that were born that are Gen Yers this year are turning either somewhere between 29 to 43. And then we've got the Gen Zers, which are like my kids, that were born in 95 to 09. So that means this year they're turning 14 to 28. So I guess my question is, so for the Gen Y millennials and the Gen Zers, because basically you're talking like the 20 to 30 somethings, what do you see as a trend? I mean, I see trends as a mediator, but what do you see as a trend with the millennial generation, the Gen Zers, sort of? Are they bucking the system for marriage? Are they trying to carve their own way? Like, what do you see? And you had mentioned too, you're doing prenuptial agreements too. Like, what do you see?
They're definitely bucking the system, not only personally but professionally. Okay. I mean, I think COVID changed things, having people work from home, and that generation wanted to work from home and change things. And like, I was raised and brought up as a Gen Xer, and my mentors, you joined a firm, you stayed there, and then you died or retired.
You retire at 65, 78, you're done. Like,
you're done. Yeah. There you
go. And they actually say, Rebecca, that the average, like these days, the average person will have 6 totally non-related careers.
Isn't that interesting?
6, like non-related. That's not like you going, all right, I'm at a big firm. And now I'm going to go to, or actually, okay, I'm going to the state attorney's office. Then I'm going to go to a big firm. Then I'm going to go to small. No, that's like, I'm an attorney, and now I'm a dog walker, and then I'm a hairdresser, and then I'm an Uber driver. Like, but they say 6 totally non-related jobs. So I don't know. I think
I like to see the statistics. That's really interesting. I would guess 3, but I have a dear friend that I used to work with, and I think he's on his 6. Actually, now that you say that,
and professionally and personally. So if they're on 6 jobs, if we go to job related, they're 6. To me, that does not say, "Ooh, they're creative. Look at them." That says lack of commitment. But I think that spills over then into relational. Correct?
It can. Yeah. I think divorce has become so prevalent. Interesting fact about me, Matthew, is when I grew up, I honestly don't remember ever knowing anybody who was divorced.
I don't think I did either.
Until I went to college.
Yeah.
And I kind of remember going, wow, this is interesting. And then my wonderful, awesome, cool, funny, brilliant, and unfortunately deceased brother, he was married to a fantastic woman. She's still a dear friend of mine. And they got a divorce. And I was so confused.
Yeah.
But it actually helped me launch my career. Okay. Because I realized that's not a failure. Yeah. That's you need a different path.
I'll tell you from a man's point of view. Okay.
Yes.
From a male point of view, and I've done all of them, so I can say, all right, great, I've checked all those boxes. So when I was in my 20s, I ended up having to file bankruptcy. I felt like a failure with money. Okay. And then in my late 20s, then I got divorced. I felt like a failure in relationship. Okay.
Wow.
In between, and then in my early 30s, I had a foreclosure. Then I'm like, great, I can't even provide a home for my kids. I felt like a failure yet again. And I think it was because, again, just like we're talking, like Gen Xers, like those were foreign. Like I didn't know people that got divorced. I didn't know people that filed bankruptcy. I didn't foreclosure. What does that mean, right? But as a man, I guess going, wow, I can't handle my finances. I don't know how to deal with relationships, and I can't even provide for my family. And maybe it's an ego thing. And I do run into those as a mediator in family law where the men are just beating themselves up going, whereas the woman's like, so we'll just try it again. We'll just try it again. And the man, though, I think it's just a crush to the ego going, I don't know. It's that's sort of what I've seen. But so now,
yeah, but it definitely is. By the way, you're definitely not a failure.
No. I mean, I got over that. Therapy helped me get over that. I was like, yeah.
I think it's good for those viewing or listening to this to know those things really aren't failures. They're transitions. They're transitions.
Absolutely.
And,
what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Great saying. True saying. And I remember, this is such a stupid story. Definitely edit this one out. But anyway, I remember nowadays, kids that are cheerleaders, start when they're like 2. Yeah. I'm exaggerating, I don't know, but very young. So my junior year in high school, I thought, I'm going to go for cheerleading. Never done it. Didn't do gymnastics. I'm like, I'm going to go try. So I tried out, didn't make it. I was crushed. Now, looking back, it's silly. I wasn't trained. I didn't know how to do it. Yeah. And had the best year. Got in, lead musicals, a bunch of plays, played tennis, track, did a ton of other stuff. So my senior year, I'm like, darn it, I'm going to try it again. So I went out again and I got it.
For more information about my services or to schedule your mediation with me, either in person or using my iChat mediation virtual platform built by Cisco Communications, visit me online at imediateinc.com. Call me at 561-262-9121. Toll free at 877-822-1479 or email me at mbrickman@ichatmediation.com.
It became my thing, my happy dance. So, because they're like, I know how to do that.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, it doesn't kill you, makes a failure. But, back to, the younger.
Yeah. Now, trends that these younger people are doing.
Trends. Another trend is me. I'll tell you about me, then the trends. Me, I had a weird rule. Thank God. I had a rule. I made it up when I was a kid, and I stuck to it.
Okay, I can't wait.
I would not get married till I was 30.
Okay.
That was my rule. I definitely would have been divorced at least once had I not had that rule. Maybe twice.
Where did it come from?
My brain. I don't know.
Well, that was just a choice. Like you weren't told, hey, you shouldn't marry till 30, or that was just something you decided on your own.
Poor kids, and they want to change that because my parents had me older, and that was tough because I had to care for them. Loved them. They're both deceased, but love them. But it was tough. I was truly sandwich generation. Yeah. And so my kids were like, we're going to reverse that. That was rough watching that. But so that was my personal rule.
Okay.
A trend now is questioning marriage. Because if you think about it, you and I growing up didn't know any people divorced. Our kids, they know so much divorce.
Do you know the latest statistics?
No.
Okay.
What? So a statistic guy.
Yeah, I'm a statistic guy. So what county are you in?
Orange
Orange
County,
County.
Orlando, Florida. My office is right downtown.
Okay. All right. So you're in Orange County. I'm just north. I've been in Palm Beach County forever and ever. I'm now in Martin County, but I still do most of my mediations with Palm Beach and Broward and Miami.
That's a different world there, by the way.
It is. And okay.
I clerked at Gunster.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I had 3 offices: West Palm, Fort Lauderdale, and Stewart.
Okay. And all right. And I'm in Palm City, which is like Stewart West.
Right.
Yeah. So nationally, divorce rates, 50%, right? Palm Beach County, 55% of first time divorces. Now, this is interesting. So 2 years ago, it's been 17 years I've been practicing. I've missed 3 of the family law conferences in Orlando they have every year.
Yeah, I just went.
I just went. Yeah, I was there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was interesting was they had given the statistic on paternity, which actually sadly, and I think this will lead into what you're talking about this generation bucking the system, was I didn't go for the past 2 years, but the statistic has gone up 2% in 2 years, which is pretty bad. That as of right now in the United States, 42% of the children being born are born out of wedlock. 42%. It's never been that high. It was 2 years ago, it was 40%, and we were astonished that it was 40. It's now 42%. So if you take the 42% that are born right into parenting plans, split homes, and then you take, the rest of them are marriages, but half of them end in divorce, you're in the 70 percentile of children in split homes.
Well, that may explain some of the trends,
Okay, so what are you saying?
Yeah, so one of the trends is people not getting married.
Yeah.
And just living together. And that's fine. I did that once.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine, but it's got its downside.
Bingo. So, and one thing I wanted any listeners that have decided to have a domestic partnership, and I want
define that for people. Define like domestic partnership.
You're together, you love each other, it's a complete relationship. You're not married. So what I want to say to folks doing that is be smart. Think about a few things. Think about your intent. And what I mean by that is, if you're married and one of you die, the other person's going to receive everything likely. If you have a domestic partnership relationship and one of you dies, maybe your intent is for them to have everything. It's not probably what's going to happen unless you take some additional legal steps. What are those? Certainly a will. But probate is tough. One of the couple easier things you can do is literally put each other on each other's bank accounts, even if you don't, ever look at each other's bank accounts or anything.
So something that simple? Really?
That simple.
Wow. I did not know that.
Because if one of you dies, it's still the other person's bank account.
Well, that's true. Yeah, it's a joint bank account.
You don't have to go through probate. You don't have to do all that. So if your intent is to leave something to your domestic partner, take some of those additional steps. Right. If that's your intent. I'm not saying you have to, but if your intent is for that person to have your bank account, if you die, just do it. Life is short. You never know. So I would say additional legal steps should be taken if that is the decision that's made.
So I've seen all right. So I'll give you some interesting, a little interesting history, and I don't even know if I've gone this deep into my personal life is basically an open book. I've written a book about me. I've got the podcast. But this is interesting. Now that we're talking about domestic partnerships, okay? So as we said, I'm a Gen Xer, okay? I met my current wife in 2007, okay? We had a marriage. I proposed to her, And we had a marriage ceremony in 2011. Okay.
Okay.
We did not file or sign a marriage certificate.
Oh, don't do that.
Because, well, okay. And a lot of it had to do with, like I said, I had been previously married. And my biggest thing, Rebecca, was I loved her, but I didn't want to own anything with anybody. Okay. And she had kids from a previous marriage. I had kids from a previous marriage. And so we weren't having kids. Okay. So we didn't have to worry about that. But I was like, I don't want to own anything. But you know what? But, for my parents, because remember, he's a pastor, and for my grandmother and family, and for our church and our pastor, fine, we're going to have our ceremony in front of God and witnesses. Okay, great. So we had our ceremony in 2011. My wife, now, from a woman's point of view, my wife, and she was a great sport. In hindsight, I should never have done that to her, but she was a good sport, all things considered. But from 2011 until 2018, there were those times where she's like, I mean, we're not really married. Like, are you going to commit? Like, we're not. And I'm like, no, we're married, baby. Look at the pictures. She was a good sport, but
She was a good sport.
But in 2018, only because it started to become a little bit more, like we heard more about it, we actually went to the courthouse and filed for domestic partnership. I'm still not marrying her. So I did. So we met in 2007, had a marriage ceremony in 2011. Another 7 years, I'm still not marrying her. Another 7 years, and I'm like, okay, I'm getting there, baby. I'm almost there. We filed for a domestic partnership. Now, why did we do it? Because I'm selfish, because I wanted to be put on her company's medical insurance. Well, guess what? Her particular company didn't recognize domestic partnerships, so it didn't work. So the next year, 2019, I said fine. So we signed a marriage certificate, filed, officially married. Best decision. I'm like, why in the world did I not do this sooner? Because surprisingly enough, it is not. People say, oh, it's just, I said it for years. Oh, it's just a piece of paper. What do you need a piece of paper for? No, you know what? There really is so much more to it. There's a commitment. It is mental, spiritual, emotional. It is physical. It's everything. And it's not just a piece of paper. If it was just a piece of paper, like whatever. And so, oh my gosh, it accelerated our relationship. And there's like, oh my gosh, it really did change. But talking about domestic partnerships, like we were on each other's bank account, fine. But like, I refused to buy property with her. I'm like, no, I have my company. It's premarital. No, I wrote my book. It's premarital. No, I have my car. It's premarital. No, this is your debt. That's not mine. Like, right. Like, and looking back,
it's really interesting.
She was a good sport, because I don't think most people would have put up with me. Honestly. I mean, like, and in hindsight, I wouldn't have put up with myself. But she was a good sport, and we did that in 2019. And, we bought a house last year together. We're both on the house. We've got everything together. We're all, everything, and it's amazing. But I actually went through the whole, well, we'll do this. And not just the bank account. Okay, we're living together. We had the guise of we're married because we had our ceremony, and we even filed for domestic partnership.
Really interesting.
And I'm not this new millennial generation. Again, I'm a Gen Xer. But here's what I wouldn't do. There was no way that I was ever going to do a prenup. Okay, but I'll do a domestic partnership. I don't understand. Sometimes I don't understand my own logic, Rebecca.
You're an interesting guy, man.
Yeah, but so let me ask you this: with these Gen Yers, in this millennial that they're sort of, they're going, nah, I don't think I really want to get married. but they are living together. Maybe they're like me. Maybe they do file for a domestic partnership or they do the bank. Um, what kind of challenges do you see as an attorney? Because I see challenges as a mediator when basically, because then, like, if they're having kids, we're having to do paternity, but what if they bought a house together, right? Or what if they do have joint bank accounts and then things don't work out? And, like, then what do you see? Or medical issues, like one of them gets sick and they're like, I want medical decision. No, you're not on that. With the, like, remember with Terry Shiva, like we have an exact, like if you don't have a living will, there's an exact order. And if you are not married and a spouse, you've got other people that get to make medical decisions. Are you seeing any of that as an attorney?
Well, man, you just said a lot of good points there.
I have.
Well, that's another, I'm glad you talked about what if somebody gets sick, because that's also huge.
Yeah.
I mean, so get a living will if that's your intent.
Well, especially recently since COVID, people are dropping like flies.
Yeah.
With and without vaccines. And if we're talking millennials, we're talking 29 to 43. You look at the recent statistics, these are the people that are dropping. And if they're living together and they're not married and they're on life support or they die, like, now what?
Well, these are exactly the things when I said, think if you're going to do that and do a domestic partnership, think of all the other ramifications. Yeah. If you have ever been in a situation where you had to make the medical decisions, or you've been in a situation where you wanted to and couldn't, those are two very difficult places, and you want to make sure those decisions are made way ahead of time. Yeah. When my father was aging, he lived to be 91, amazing man. Tell you sometime he got a case to the Supreme Court. He was the first case to the United States Supreme Court about separation of church and state. It's Time magazine, whole 9 yards. Really interesting man. But these are things you got to think about. And when he got sick, thank God, I had been put in charge of his medical care. Okay. Because they're really, my mom was in no position, unfortunately, to make decisions, and it would have been her. Yeah. My dad was smart. I mean, he did a lot of things and taught me a lot of things. And having done that was a world of wonderful to be able to help him. And if anybody, and bless you, if you've ever been through loved ones who have been sick, it's such a hard thing. Yeah. But you don't want to be in a position where you have no authority. In the medical world, you have to have an advocate. Somebody you totally trust to make really, really tough decisions. So that's an example in a domestic partnership to think about, a living will. And I think I get bucking the system and not doing the traditional things, but I think.
What are you seeing with property? Because, two people will then, they're like, hey, we're going to buy property together and then we're going to have kids together, but we're not getting married. And then what about when it doesn't work out? Then what?
Well, I'm not a real estate lawyer, but my understanding is that, if you buy property together, it's going to become your property, I believe.
Joint tenants in common.
Tenants in common, that's right. That's right. Oh, God, you take me back to law school.
I know. I deal with this a lot in mediation.
It's interesting.
I deal with this. For example, I had a mediation Wednesday or Thursday. And they had to go, being that they never got married, they could not, like if you're married, you go see a family attorney who can deal with equitable distribution, parenting, time sharing, child support, alimony, all of it, right? But being that they were not married, they did not have the luxury of going to a family court to do everything. So they had to go to a civil court to deal with the home, and they had to go to a family court to deal with the children. There also were not protections under the law of marriage when it came to how the home was going to be done. Because if you're married, It's date of marriage, date of filing. It's marital. It's a marital piece of property, 50%. But in civil, it was like, okay, well, who put the down payment? Do you get to recoup the down payment? Well, it wasn't marital money. So did you pay 50-50 or did you pay 70-30? Are you looking for credits and offsets? Like what looks like a great idea? Ooh, we're bucking the system. Really?
Yeah.
You're losing protections. Even though I did not drink my own medicine for a long time, I always told people, regardless if you believe in the institution, if you look at marriage as an institution, if you don't believe in the institution, there's protections in the institution, and more for women than men, because like alimony, nope. Like generally, if you live together and you play house and you don't get married, when it's over, it's generally equal time sharing with the child. It's shared parental responsibility. You have child support, and then he who makes the money gets the toys. Okay, and there's no and if somebody sacrificed a career to stay home and take care of the child, you don't get a payday for that. You're not getting anything back. There's no alimony. You lost out.
Yeah.
This generation's not paying attention to that. They're thinking, ooh, this is a great way to sidestep the norm. But like you said, it should be harder to get married, but people need to pay attention to, like, what does it look like if it doesn't work out? Which is that what you're doing? I'm going to circle back to what you said before when you're doing weddings and you talk to people. Do you sort of do that with them, sort of like preventative maintenance? Like, okay.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And by the way, I don't know why this word has never hit me as hard as it has today, but it is funny that we call it an institution.
Yeah.
I never really thought about that before because you just say, the institution of marriage.
But I hear that from this generation. Oh, I don't believe in the institution of marriage. That's what they refer to it as.
It's like
sounds like that's so non-romantic.
Right?
It's a business.
No, not institution to me. I mean, that word has so many different meanings, like, mental institution,
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about all these things. And I love marriage,
Yeah.
And
I love my marriage. Yeah.
like I said, I didn't start it till 30, about 4 days after I was 30. And I told him when we met, I said, I'm not getting married on 30. So we got married September 4th.
That's awesome.
My birthday's in August. So, it is really special, and sometimes it doesn't work out.
Yeah.
My brother's ex-wife, when my brother died, she spoke at his funeral. I mean, they loved each other to the day he died.
Yeah.
And they were married.
Yeah.
They had 2 amazing children as a result. And I guess you can have children without marriage, of course. We talked about that. But they had a wonderful 10 years together. And at his funeral, she said something so funny. Which I was like, yeah, that's true. She just like, I just couldn't handle him. I couldn't keep up with him. He unfortunately left her. But he left his wives at their 10th anniversary. I think he had a 10 limit on marriage, 10-year limit on marriage.
They call that the 10-year itch.
Oh, they call it 7-year itch, but he held out to 10.
I thought it was 10.
I thought it was 7-year itch.
Huh.
We've had fact checked us on that one.
Yeah.
7-year itch.
7. Actually, you know what? 7. The more you say it, I'm going, yeah, maybe I'm just making up 10 because I'm a Gen Xer and I'm a 10. But yeah. But you know what? I think you're right. Yeah, 7-year itch. That does sound more familiar.
Brother had a 10-year itch, so he married divorced his first and second wife very fast, suddenly, in my perspective.
Yeah.
It wasn't like he complained or, it was just done.
It was like a light switch.
It was like a light switch.
Wow.
And it would just, and, I'd be curious to pick his brain about him, all of that.
Okay.
Something he did teach me, though, he and his first wife taught me when we were talking about banks. This is what my husband and I do. And maybe for an anniversary at some point, like you filed the papers, maybe I'll change it. but my brother did it this way and I've done it this way. Another healthy way to handle something like that in our marriage has been, I have my bank account. He has his bank account. Should I pass, I sign the paperwork, it goes to him, but he's not on my bank account.
Yeah.
And same with him. So he's really into guitars, for example. If he wants to go buy a fancy Fender, go for it. I don't need to know about it. If I want to go get a mani-pedi, go for it.
Yeah.
Whatever it may be. And then we have a joint account that we pay for all our joint assets with, and mortgage, things like that, stuff for the kids. And so that there's a lot of creative ways for those who are bucking the system on designing things that work, that aren't what we grew up with traditionally.
Yeah, where it's like one bank account, husband and wife are on the account, all the money goes in there.
That's what everyone did.
Yeah.
that was. I mean, maybe most still do. I don't know.
I deal as a mediator. I hear exactly how you have structured it. That is most common to me is his account, her account, and then there's usually one joint account for marital bills, but his account, her account, and then one joint account. I deal with that so often. That is the way.
That's what we do.
Honestly, Rebecca, I can't tell you the last time I have not seen that. Like, that's a very common practice. Is his, hers, and ours. His, hers, and ours. I mean, I had one the other day where ours, he was the accusation of marital dissipation and waste. He was taking the money, and so she went in, pulled out the money from the joint account, closed out, or basically stopped using it, took the money, put it into her personal account. Now they're getting divorced, and she had done that after filing. And so of course the accusation was, well, you took marital funds. He's entitled to half of them. But then she said, well, look, he was wasting money. That was for our bills and expenses. So I pulled it out of our joint, put it in my personal. I still paid bills and expenses with it, and then showed us the bank account so we could see, okay, yes, there's FP&L. And so no, you're not getting a credit because she didn't take it to go do her thing, just like you said, like a mani-pedi or a Fender guitar. No, she still paid marital. And it's like, well, then you're not getting a credit. But there was still this his, hers, and ours going on. And still, like, if you're married, it's all still marital. If it's money made during the marriage, it doesn't matter. But for what you and I are talking about with, like, viable alternatives to the traditional marriage, how maybe do you structure those? That's even what people are doing that are married. They're going his, hers, and ours.
Yeah, and absolutely. And it's what's your comfort zone?
Yeah.
And, it's kind of like, there's so many things. I guess to a certain extent, I bucked the system, so to speak. I didn't take my husband's name.
Okay.
So he's Canella.
Okay.
And for me, Rebecca Canella sounded like Chiquita Banana. And he was really cool about it. Really cool about it. I was like, just because I'm getting married doesn't mean I'm not going to be Rebecca Palmer.
So I have a question for you about, okay, because I think this goes to what we're talking about, the Gen Y, the Millennials, getting married later in life, all of that. So I do see a trend where like, as a mediator, I'm getting like, I get the request for mediation. They've got two different names. I'm like, oh, okay, it's a paternity. No, it's a divorce because they are not taking. But generally the ones that are not taking the names are the Gen Ys and the Millennials. And what's interesting, and of course, as a mediator, I'm always like, okay, why? Like, okay, what's going on? Like, I want to know why. Like, I'm always about like, okay, what's going on? Give me some information. Here's what I find interesting is with this generation that is getting married, and they are doing it later in life. They've done it after college. They're probably already established in a career. Now, you and I talked, okay, maybe it's the first of 6, but it's still a career, right? But to go and now have to take someone else's name and have to go back to all of their certifications, their licenses, their diplomas, they're like, no, because like I have been known in my practice for years as Rebecca Palmer. Well, all of a sudden, now I'm Rebecca Kennelly. It's like, well, who's that? Like, no, and then have to go change all the licenses. They're like, no. And so that, that generation getting married later, that's one of the reasons why I hear that they're not taking on the name.
That was one of my reasons.
Okay. All right, good.
Because that was definitely one of my reasons. Had been practicing for a handful of years, and not that I was
But
big shot.
You were known in the community as Rebecca Palmer.
Right.
Yeah.
And it seemed weird to change my name. And like I said, just like your wife was a sport, my husband was a sport. He's always been a sport about it. He jokes because if I make the hotel reservations, hello, Mr. Palmer, and then he has a funny joke. He always says back, he goes, actually, I kept my name. I'm Canella. I just,
I did have one mediation in 17 years where I looked across the table at the wife. I said, so are you changing your name? And I hear out of the other side, no, but I am. I turn over to the husband. I'm like, what do you mean? He says, well, we thought we'd be progressive, and I took her name, and I want mine back.
Wow.
It's only happened once to me, but it was a millennial that they thought, we're going to do something cool. I'm going to take her name instead. And now he's like, no, I want my name back. It's only been one time.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's only been one time.
Well, again, my husband was that. I've never heard that. But my husband was a sport too because he was raised Catholic. I was raised Presbyterian, and he was cool about that too. We tried each other's churches. Yeah. We now denomination is not important to us. We're Methodist. Well, that's not true. We go to a Methodist church. Yeah. And that we love. But it's like, all those things. And he was a trooper because my last name only goes back to my great grandfather. So it's not like it was like his family name,
Sure.
It only goes to my great grandfather. Came over from Sweden. Okay. And our last name was Johansson. And as the story goes, he moved to Chicago and he was praying for guidance and looked up and saw the Palmer House Hotel and literally didn't legally change it. It just crossed out Johansson.
Just crossed it out.
Because I know, I'm Palmer. He chose it.
Awesome.
I love the story too. So
yeah.
I remember I did the Tiger Woods, Elian Nordigan divorce. And I remember her thinking about it too. And she chose to go to Nordigan. She didn't even know that was an option. I remember the circumstances. And that was an interesting time in my life too. Yeah. But lovely, 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 lovely woman. And the big choice, like for her, I remember the struggle, and for a lot of people, the struggle are the kids.
Yes. What do we do with the kids? All right. So what do you do? I'll tell you what I end up suggesting and what I see a lot of, but what do you experience with that?
About the kids?
Yeah. Okay. So like the kids may have the family name and then mom may want to change her. What do you see? What do you suggest? What do you experience with that?
It is such a personal decision.
Right.
I see most people saying, I'm just going to keep the name because of the kids. I would say majority say that. And I don't fight them either way. Okay. The only time, because that's such a personal decision. Yeah. Just like when people come and ask me, I do a 2-hour consultation. We go through all these things about their life. And then at the end, sometimes people look at me and say, should I get a divorce? Yeah. And my answer is always, that's the one question I will not answer. I have to look at myself. I have to look at myself in the mirror. Yeah. That's your decision and your journey. And I'll walk it with you if the answer is yes. But that's your decision. Yeah. But I mostly find people keep the married name. One of the difficult situations. So the only time I ever had a fight with a client about the name was I represented the husband in that particular case, and he did not want the wife, the mother of his children, to keep his name.
I got 2 stories I'll tell you about that.
For more information about my services or to schedule your mediation with me, either in person or using my iChat mediation virtual platform built by Cisco Communications, visit me online at imediateinc.com. Call me at 561-262-9121, toll free at 877-822-4600. 1479, or email me at mbrickman@ichatmediation.com.